All right, good evening. Welcome back. Thirsty Thursday. Cheers, guys. Trevor, it's good to see that you're not underwater. The Piglet Pelican is still standing and has your lights on it.
Absolutely. Happy to be here.
Bobby, we can see in the background there that the nice little breeze, a palm tree.
The Delaware palm trees.
That's right.
I'm here at the House of Sauce. So great wings, great food, great sunset. Oh, look at that! Hold on, let me show you Lance's picture. That's what we're looking at right behind me.
Wow, that's awesome.
There you go.
So tonight, folks, we don't really have a show planned as far as topics and special guests and all that kind of stuff. One of the things that I figured we would talk about is everything happening in Florida, and Trevor being down there can give us a little bit more information on what they've gone through and what they're dealing with. And one of the things that we talked about pre-show is how do we prepare for that, and just kind of a show regarding that. So with that being said, we'll kick it over to Trevor, give us a little update on how you guys are doing, and we'll go from there.
Great, Ben. Appreciate that very much. First and foremost, want to keep our thoughts and prayers with our brothers and sisters over there in like Naples and Fort Myers and Venice and Sarasota and all the different areas over there. Certainly we all have friends and colleagues that are living over in that area, and like Hoovenen over in Punta Gorda, all those folks. So, any time a hurricane comes up the coast, as you guys well know, even in the mid-Atlantic, it's a significant issue. And it's a game of inches, truly, that if it tracks, a few miles to the north or south or to east or to west, it can make a huge difference on the impact. And one thing that I'm very cognizant of, and this has been from my Ocean City days, is that when, any of our firefighters, paramedics, dispatchers, military personnel, National Guard, whomever, or law enforcement, when they're away serving, they're away from their family, and their family's serving too. And the best thing that we can do is make sure our people are taken care of. They're our most valuable resource. So if they're home and their family's not taken care of beforehand and they're on duty, they're not really there. They're physically there, but mentally they're not there. I mean, they're stressed, or they're prone to a lot of stuff going on. So even from back in the day, I saw the good and the bad of management, of how some of those things were addressed. And you always try to the best of my ability here, make sure that, hey, when you come in, that you have full faith and confidence that your family's taken care of. Either they've evacuated or you've provided for them as much as you possibly can before you report to duty. I had extra crews in yesterday. They kind of had some fun because we have a very great relationship with our business community. The Marriott Ocean Point, which is this beautiful, beautiful resort there in my first due, they'll give us rooms for additional personnel. Bobby, both you and Ben have been down into my first due and know that the living quarters for my fire crews is more akin to being on a submarine. It's not grand, it's not big whatsoever. So the Marriott actually gives us like villa suites to put our staff up in. And then if we have to unask the island, we do similar to what we did back in Ocean City. We take certain apparatus off the island, certain apparatus.
Hey, Trevor?
Yeah.
If you cut down the side of that cheese sauce, they probably have more room.
Yeah, okay. Hey, that is my 20 square feet of joy right there, Bobby. Don't make fun of my workspace, but that's funny because it's true. But anyway,
he didn't do the desk fado, so he can't have people seeing him drive the desk right now.
There you go. You know what? But because the FCC has certain regulations, I cannot display the obscene finger gesture that I was going to. But nevertheless, kind of going on with my story, our folks last night, my fast attack crew was at the Marriott, and I just said, look, guys, just because you're living like rock stars tonight, don't act like them. So please don't trash the room. If you want to bounce on the bed, that's fine. Do whatever you want to do, but just, have fun. And it was an uneventful night, believe it or not. I mean, we ran the smoke investigation call and, some other little minor stuff here and there, but we were actually very fortunate. but the expanse of the storm is just so large. And I think that's what people fail to realize with these storms, just like back in Maryland and the Delmarva Peninsula. If that storm comes up the coast or even skirts the coast, we have a whole subset of things that we have to deal with as coastal fire service. If it comes up the Chesapeake Bay, we still have things to deal with, but then the inland communities, just like in Baltimore and PG County, and even on the the western part of the Eastern Shore during like Isabel and Irene and Sandy and some of those other storms, they got pummeled. And as a coastal community, it wasn't so bad. So to that end, I think that we always need to realize that any of these storm events are very protracted. We might be on duty. We might go in for a 24-hour shift and know we have to stay for up to 72. And depending on circumstances, the other people can't get in to relieve us. And in the meantime, our families are home, our fellow brothers and sisters, their families are home trying to fend for themselves while we're out trying to protect the rest of these communities. And I really hope that going forward, and this is always pushing the boulder up the hill, there's a lot of folks specific down here to South Florida or Florida in general that are just like back home. There's the ones that they're never going to evacuate because they've been through X, Y, and Z storms over the years. And they never felt the need. And then we have a lot of people who are new to the area who've never really experienced hurricanes. We had such an influx of people moving to the state who just completely, their cheese slips off their cracker because this is something completely new and foreign to them, and creates some issues for the first responders that have to go out and deal with the decisions these people have made. But nevertheless, I know everyone's probably seen some footage of especially the West Coast and Central Florida. Please keep those people in your thoughts and prayers. They're still responding as we speak to a very catastrophic event, and now the storm's going back out over the Atlantic and working its way up towards the Carolinas. And Bobby and Ben, this as well as anybody else. We were exceptionally fortunate on the Delmarva Peninsula. Not that we didn't have our fair share of hurricanes and northeast storms, but the Carolinas, even more specifically, the Outer Banks of the Carolinas usually took the brunt of the abuse for us. That when a storm would hit, it would at least break it up enough or slow it down enough or weaken it enough that we didn't receive the impact that they did. So that's kind of what the West Coast did for the majority of the state within the last 24 to 36 hours and going forward. So, as all of us have worked in coastal communities for the majority of our careers, if not all of our careers, we know the impact, and we see what the brothers and sisters do. And Ben, later on, I want to kind of circle back to some of the deployment philosophies and deployment models, not poking anyone in the eye, but just I want to share some things that I shared with my people during the briefing yesterday, and that I firmly believe in, and I just like to get some of that information out there. And whether people agree with it or not, I just kind of want to give them my philosophy and the why behind it. So with that, Bobby, I see you got a palm tree behind you too that's kind of blowing in the breeze. Hold on, there's one right back there. That one I don't have to replant in like 2 months. So just let you know.
Yeah, this one's going to die. There's no doubt about that. So, I'm a really scientific guy. And, so I watch the weather with that kind of same thought process that I do for everything else. And I think what happens is we all get tornado warnings, or we get hurricane warnings, or we get, I guess other parts of the world get tsunami warnings, and oftentimes they don't happen to be bad. And I think in our minds, we get a little bit more complacent each time, and I think when they talk about a 16-foot wall of water, I think that an actual hurricane, it's a very, very small area that actually gets that 16-foot wall of water, but they have to put an area up. And I remember, and you probably remember this, Trevor, they used to use much larger cones for hurricanes, and they had a lot of big municipal areas that bitched about, they have to evacuate and the storm never hit them and things like that, and so on and so forth. And I think through the years, I feel like they've narrowed that cone down a little bit. but the storm surge thing is still kind of a wide swath for what actually gets at. So I think like what we saw in Fort Myers and some of the areas on the on the west coast of Florida, they got it. They got that actual brunt of it. And as a firefighter, what I want to really talk about is everyone's seen the pictures and the videos from Fort Myers, and all I can say is back off a little bit. That's their community. Those guys are at the firehouse and they got flooded. And if you talk to the guys up at Rockaway Beach up off of in New York, when they got devastated, when you talk to those guys up there, they talk about how fast the water moved in. They had no time to move anything. So literally by the time they realized water was coming into their fire station, within 5 or 10 minutes, it was already at waist deep. And the only thing they could do was get out of there. I just want to say that, as a fire service, we're a brotherhood and a sisterhood, and we need not immediately attack fire departments for staying in their communities. Because when I look at those pictures, guess where these people's houses are that are working in that firehouse? The same community, So they're suffering loss of houses. They're losing their own stuff. They probably parked their own cars in that parking lot at that firehouse. They lost their own things. And, and the bottom line is, like, Trevor, this in Ocean City, we're essentially a little strip of land, or maybe an island, you could call it. And when we leave, it's over. And the problem is, like, our standard, usually most fire department standards are a 60-mile-an-hour sustained wind. They stop operations. Well, when you have that storm surge coming in, you may not be able to get out at 60-mile-an-hour winds. It's just, they were in the worst place, the worst time. And my thoughts and prayers go out to those guys, because I know not only are they taking a beating on the internet because of how dumb everyone says they are, but their own places have probably suffered some damage or things like that, and they weren't able to be home with their families to take care of them. So I think we just got to be easy on it. We're the only solution to our community's problems, and we stay late. We do a lot of things, and sometimes we risk our lives. That's just kind of the way we.
Oh, I think Bobby's frozen. But just to kind of jump in, and comment, in addition to what Bobby's talking about.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
That was basically the gist of it. Fire departments are trying to do the right thing in a horrible situation. And Florida doesn't have big mountain ranges like people are used to. There's not like significantly high ground in Florida. They had catastrophic and devastating flooding in the middle of Florida with this storm. Right. So there's not always a place for people to run in Florida because there's no mountains or anything there.
Right. And Bobby, I'm sorry, Ben, I just want to throw this in to Bobby's point before I forget, because I'm getting feeble and old and I forget things easily. But, to Bobby's point, these firefighters, paramedics, everybody, they're serving this community, and we have to rely on the same predictions and forecasts that everybody else gets. There's no magic fairy dust that comes through the EOC or anybody else that tells us exactly where things are going to hit. And just like Ocean City, my folks know that our storm plan requires them that if we get to a certain point, we take a portion of our apparatus and we go to the mainland to be able to salvage it. And we keep a skeleton crew back on the island because, think about these coastal communities. A lot of them are only accessible by bridges or very small, low-lying causeways that are prone to washouts. And people do stay, and we're not going to risk our lives unnecessarily. But at the same time, just like to Bobby's point, a lot of these firefighters live in the same community in which they work. None of my firefighters live in the same community in which they work. So to me, that's even a level of dedication that they're willing to, sacrifice a lot of stuff to come there. Agreeably, Bobby, I've never been a big fan of like the what was that one thing? Like the watch desk, or when people sit there on social media and start tearing up fire departments. Look, all of us do stupid crap from time to time. All of us are accountable for what we do. I get that 110%. But a picture is a fraction of a second in time. It does not paint a huge picture. Do we screw up some things time to time? Yes. But when you have a storm surge coming in, and like you said, Bobby, within a matter of minutes, things go from a dry apparatus bay floor to 3 feet of water in your apparatus bay. There's not a whole lot you're going to do, even with a crystal ball, to prevent that. And you're still there to try to serve the community, including the firefighters and paramedics who live in that same community. So, I agree with you. Before people start getting into the Monday morning quarterbacking or the social media throne, if you will, where they start making all these assessments. One thing I will say, and Ben, I'm sorry because I'm getting on my soapbox here in just a minute. One thing I've been a very big proponent of, even when I was back in Ocean City, and I do this to this day with my folks here, and we used to do this in Ocean City all the time. We'd have floodwaters, and you see the folks, the fire personnel, they're going out in turnout gear or they're wearing station uniforms. I mean, that's our daily stuff. That's what we're used to. That's what we work in. But if you look at floodwater of anything, whether it's coming in from a tidal basin, a stagnant basin, flash flooding, everything else, that's a bunch of crap you don't want to bathe in. So like for my folks, the uniform of the day, unless it was a structural fire or a water rescue, meaning like a surface water rescue or anything else, they're encapsulated. They're wearing either dry suits or chest waders. And the reason being is I don't want that crap touching their skin, because all that flood water, anything that comes up through the storm sewer, the sanitary sewer, my garage, your garage, they're waiting in that. And we used to do this in Ocean City all the time. Bobby, you remember this. We would come back in soaking ass wet from a call that during a storm. And the first thing we do is walk into where we lived for the next 24 hours, kick our feet up on the kitchen table where we ate for the next 24 hours. And we would just, we wouldn't decon ourselves or anything else. And then, we started having the little itchy rash a couple of days later. We wondered why. So, that was a big thing too, even with our lifeguards, where we would embed them with the engine crews to help with water rescues. That was great. But those guys are used to wearing trunks and tank tops. And we're putting them in floodwater and hazmat suit. So that would be my only thing, is to evaluate some of our deployment model. And I'm not poking anyone in the eye. I mean, these folks were out there, they were doing the job, doing the deal. And I'm not poking them in the eye because they're doing what they're used to. But I really, I try to get my people to think about the elements that you're actually operating in, that you're out in essentially this chemical soup, this nastiness, this stuff. So there's a way that we can better protect ourselves with a different, maybe out of the box PPE, where it might be, you might not be a water rescue person, but you're wearing a dry suit, or you're wearing a set of chest waders to go and wade over to Meemaw, who's on her front porch because she didn't evacuate and now she's in 4 feet of water in her living room. Maybe just think of that, because I want to protect our folks too. God only knows what we've waded through over the years. And that's when I see these firefighters and paramedics and law enforcement folks going out and already risking themselves in very, very dangerous environments, but then to expose themselves to all that crap that's in the floodwater. I think that maybe there's a way that we can evaluate this and look at some maybe non-traditional sets of PPE, if you will, for future responses. And with that, there ends my sermon.
All good. And I think those are important things to talk about. Going back to what Bobby was talking about, we showed the video from Naples and the speed at which that water came in. The other thing to think about is that these guys live in Florida. They work in Florida. Like, they live in a coastal town just like we do. This is not their first hurricane. Like, they know how to prepare. They've had people for years, as long as the department's been around, have gone over how to prepare for this kind of stuff. So you see something like that and you're like, oh man, that sucks. Like, yeah, it does suck. Did they plan to do that? No. Did they mean to do that? No. They're like, oh man, I bet if we leave the ladder truck outside, they'll get us one that bends in the middle. Like, that wasn't their plan. They may not like that ladder truck, but they didn't do it on purpose. So I think to Bobby's point, it's those keyboard warriors can piss up a rope in the hurricane wind. Fuck them. And then something else I saw and I thought was pretty interesting. The other thing we were talking about was Fort Myers. and I'll share this again. But this is a time-lapse video, and it shows the flooding from the storm surge. So we'll watch this real quick. And you can see it starts out just a little bit coming up the street, and this for a while the street's able to handle it, but then it just starts coming in, and it's holy cow, it's impressive. So again, this is it is sped up, it's time lapse, so it's not like we're watching this real time. But like again, to Bobby's point, these floodwaters are rising so fast. You count that the storm surge with the tides that happen every 6 hours. So if you get the storm surge and the high tide coming in at the same time, like who knows where it's going to end. But we do know that it's going to end in a bad way, and you need to be prepared for that. So again, our thoughts go out to all those folks on the western side of Florida, and hopefully they get a pretty good response. I've seen some other stuff posted where there's just thousands upon thousands of electrical trucks standing by to go in and start putting stuff back together. And that's most of the trades are like that. Pre-show I was talking with Trevor, and got some days off next week in between shifts, and if needed, I was prepared to pack up and head down that way to visit them. And I have an aunt that lives outside of Orlando, and go down and see them if needed. But fortunately, everybody's okay. So yeah. So Trevor, you had mentioned you wanted to talk about deployment and that kind of stuff. Or was that your soapbox?
No, I mean that was it in part. But Ben, I'm glad you brought up some of the other folks that are just so integral to the recovery efforts, and especially like our electrical line, our linemen, our line personnel. I know it's one of those things where all the firefighters, we have the T-shirts that say I'm a firefighter because cops need heroes too. Well, I've seen some electrical linemen that have the same one that says, I'm a lineman because firefighters need heroes. And I have a great deal of respect for those people. And think about that. I mean, they're out there in a very austere environment and stuff that we don't want to deal with, in the aftermath, trying to get our lives back to normalcy as soon as possible. Our debris management people. So when you look at from a, if you will, an emergency management standpoint, there's a lot of moving parts that are now starting to get in place that they're in a planning phase throughout the year. And I mean, we look at ourselves operationally as being very, very important, and we are. I take nothing away. I mean, we're hugely important. But think about, how we get our food, how we get our supplies, how things occur. That somebody doesn't just sprinkle fairy dust and these things happen. Our brethren and sisters in emergency management are huge, huge, huge in this process, and they deal with it more long term than we do. I mean, we deal with it in the height of the storm, literally. But after it's kind of said and done, we're able to start to demobilize where they're just starting to ramp up. I was watching a news cast earlier today, and they had the folks from Team Rubicon on there, which do phenomenal work, and they do a lot of great disaster relief work. Them and other organizations, and they're still doing work from last year's hurricanes in some communities. So it's not like they just kind of come in and boom, 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 let's take care of things in the immediate aftermath, and then we'll leave and forget about it. They have the long term that they have to deal with, and I really think that that's something that's not only admirable, but we have to look at the systems approach to all these disasters. There's a lot that goes into it. The public-private partnerships that are there. You all probably seen when there's been disasters, whether it's flooding, hurricanes, mudslides, whatever. And I can't remember. I think it's like the Tide detergent people or some other. They have those like big convoys that come down with washing machines and detergent and dryers, and will do laundry for communities. That's a concept I never would have thought of, but I just somebody thought of that and said there's a need that needs to be addressed. Feeding people, and we were very fortunate in Ocean City because we always had between Eric Olson and Rathel either cooking or eating, one or the other. We had some people that would really take care of us in the business community. I cooked it, I eat it, but we're very fortunate even in the community that I work in. Like I told you, I mean, the Marriott gave my people a frickin' villa suite to live in last night. which is better than any firehouse accommodation they'll ever have in their lives. And we have like Sailfish Marina, for example, during Hurricane Irma, they would feed public safety. They said, hey, we got all this stuff in our walk-in. They would send a cook in to who lived in the community, and they pay him, and he would come in and literally cook for fire rescue, law enforcement, anybody. And did it benefit them because they're able to get rid of their food, anything? But oh my goodness, I mean, that was phenomenal for us. And then they fed the community. If anybody wanted food, I mean, they would do these things. So I think that one of the important takeaways from this is sometimes, as much as we're divided over, whether it's politics, business, religion, whatever the case is, the silver lining, and these disasters absolutely suck, but the silver lining is it does bring the good out in people, and a lot of people come together in these circumstances. Yes, are there going to be people who are going to look at what's going on in Florida or the Carolinas or Maryland or wherever and try to capitalize on people's successes or failures? Absolutely. But from the community level, people come together, and neighbor helps neighbor. It's a phenomenal thing. So that's the light that comes out of the dark.
Just real quick to touch on something that Trevor just mentioned. As we're moving through this, the funds and the fundraising, all that kind of stuff that are getting set up, make sure if you hear people are talking about donating to those, make sure that they're donating to reputable organizations. There's a lot of times that you'll get the scumbags set something up just to make a quick buck off of this, and doesn't really go to those people to help them. So if you hear people talking about it, or if you're going to make donations, if your department, whatever, is going to donate, again, make sure that that process is vetted out, and make sure it's going to the right place to help those folks.
Cool. I just want to finish up with what I was talking about Fort Myers, and the thing is, we saw a video, and then we had people react to the video, and so the question I would ask them is, did Tampa Bay move all their fire apparatus to safe places with 1 million plus people? Did Northport move their fire apparatus to safer places? The only reason these guys are getting beat up is because someone took a video, and we kind of reacted to it, And when you talk about, Trevor, you talk about the finances and things. When I was working in Sussex County, they sent me to hurricane training conferences and things like that. And when I went, it's a long time ago. So the two hurricanes they used for that was Hurricane Hugo that struck Charleston, and Hurricane Andrew that struck Homestead, Florida. And they had it down to a number about how many cans of Fix-A-Flat would keep fire apparatus tires up, and when you would have to replace those tires on the fire apparatus. And they talked about how the tire places where the fire department got their tires at, their buildings got destroyed. And so when they tried to get tires for their apparatus, they couldn't get tires. And so they talked about, that you would have to stockpile, X amount of sets of tires, and you have to have X amount of cases of Fix-A-Flat, and a lot of other things in the middle of all that. And I remember it all made sense to me, and they had it all figured out. And they could say, like, within 2 or 3 blocks of trying to respond to fires or incidents in these areas, within 2 or 3 blocks, you're blowing a tire because of debris and nails and all that kind of stuff and everything else. So when I came back to where I worked at in the county, I said, well, we need to, stockpile, this many tires and this many boxes of Fix-A-Flat, and you can imagine what the answer was. So all of our communities could potentially completely prepare for an event like this, and all of our communities would spend millions upon millions of dollars that may never be used in 100 years. And so communities aren't going to do that. So when you look at your fire service, you look at your fire departments, you look at all these guys, we have a limited budget. We can't make it just right in those communities because we're not, and I can't blame the politicians for this. Is, if they don't get hit with it for 100 years, they're not looking to spending that kind of money when they have to distribute the money to other things that they need at the time. So, that's kind of, one of the things that goes on at the emergency management level that nobody really understands is you can be ready for whatever you want but it costs something, and it can cost it if you're totally prepared. It can cost more than your whole entire city's budget. If you're truly totally prepared. So people are just doing the best with what they can do and what they can make and things like that. And I'm really thinking about the people in those devastated communities, the civilians, everybody, the business owners, everybody else. And that's really where our thoughts should be is, how long it takes them to recover, and if we can do anything to kind of help them out. And there's always something we can do to help out these people in these communities. There's always, with the internet nowadays, you can help anybody anywhere in the world, pretty much, I think. So my thoughts go out to everybody. And for the girls that are working in the fire service down there in those horrible conditions, which I'm sure they are post-hurricane, my cheers, my glass goes up to them. You're a special kind of people to leave your home in such a tough time and serve your community. So thanks to all of them.
Yeah, and Bobby, absolutely. I want to echo your thoughts because, their homes are in the wake of that destruction also. They're not home right now to start making their lives normal. They're on duty right now. They're digging other people out. They're rescuing people off of rooftops. They're getting them out of cars. Meanwhile, their families are kind of fending for themselves. And, the fire service community does come together. And but, the first responders, a lot of people forget that they're members of the community like everybody else. So it's not like their homes are immune from destruction or flooding or anything else. They're going through the same things, but also have to provide a level of service. So absolutely, I echo your thoughts about, please remember them too, because, they're doing essentially double duty and their families are doing double duty right now, because they don't have that cohesiveness because their loved ones are out serving right now, and regardless of what entity they're serving with. And Bobby, I wanted to touch on something you said, and I agree with you wholeheartedly, is when it comes to the budget process, these legislative officials and city and town managers, they have to say, okay, this is insurance. How much are we going to stock? How much logistically can we stock? Whether it's spare tires, batteries, whatever the case is. Even if they wanted to purchase all these things, I mean, some communities and cities just don't have the means by which to store all this stuff for a rainy day. So to that end, one of the compromises that is good to be able to accomplish, if at all possible, is like, for example, is it perfect? No, but this helps us immensely as a small community that has very limited resources and very limited storage. During hurricane season, we have a pick list with different places, whether it's the Goodyear place out on North Lake or the battery place same road, but nevertheless, where we can say, hey, look, we need X amount of tires in case we have debris, because you're going to pop a tire, like you said, Bobby, every block and a half going on something. We need spare batteries. Batteries go dead in the middle of these things. It's not like you can run to Walmart and grab one. So we will do a temporary stocking of things, but at the end of the day, we can return them and get a refund with a 10% restock fee. So it's a win-win for the public-private partnership. We have the resources that we need just in case that the town or the city or the county, whoever, doesn't want to invest tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars on all these just in case items. But we need the just in case items because we're the just in case people. And with that being said, that's kind of the compromise that I've found that's worked fairly well, is to say, look, we need these things. We really can't feed it. We can't house it. We're not going to keep these things into perpetuity because those tires are likely to dry rot before we ever actually have to use them. But when we have that call or those 3 or 4 storms back to back, we can get these things during the time period that likelihood is most prevalent. We can give them back at the end. They're still brand new stock, and we pay a 10%, 15% restocking fee, which is a hell of a lot cheaper than owning these things. But we at least have them. So that's a compromise, again, that I found has kind of been helpful in accommodating exactly what you're talking about, Bobby, and also getting past the financial concerns of having all this stock that we can't use or may never use.
Great points, Trevor. And I think, those kind of relationships are born out of, people having conversations with those folks in the communities, going to those places, going to the mechanics and say, hey, look, this is what we need. Is this something that you guys are interested in? Can you help us out? And it really takes some out of the box thinking and some, it's getting out in your community. How much do we talk about, you take that EMS run and you learn the house that you're walking into. It's similar to that for the administration. Get out in your community, talk to those people, so that way when you have those significant incidents, that you have those relationships, that you know your first due, what's available. I think that's a great point.
Yeah, and Ben, even taking it further, I know we all have we should all have our storm plans or operational guidelines for anticipated natural disasters, i.e. the storm plan. But you both have been down to my community. You know how small it is, and some limitations. And with that, I can tell you during Hurricane Irma, we were without electric for only 5 days, but that kind of sucked out loud because it was like a sauna. I slept in my office for 5 days. The fire station, the annex for the living quarters for the firefighters, their generator didn't work. It failed when we lost electric. So they had no electricity. But because we had some of those relationships and we had a redundancy, just like we did in Ocean City, like if a fire station goes down because of damage, we have a relocation spot, relocation A, B, and C. Well, the Marriotts were good for us. Well, during Hurricane Irma, Marriott's their window glazing failed and they had water like flying in the rooms. So our backup was, believe it or not, was one of our marinas that had shower and laundry facilities on site, and they had a little hotel motel there, so we could relocate there, and our folks could wash their clothes. They could take a hot shower, that kind of thing. So just to your point, Ben, it takes a little bit of, I keep going back to the public-private partnerships, but getting to know some of the resources in your community. I'll give you an example. There's not a drop of diesel fuel on the island where I work, not a single drop, except for the marinas, because they obviously fuel. Can we get the diesel fuel from the end of the T pier to a fire truck? At one marina, we can. Are they able to fuel us on a regular basis? No, because we have a state fleet card that they can't process. But on an emergency basis, if there's a hurricane, I know that we can drive around back by the seawall and we can fuel our fire trucks because there's 3,200 gallons of diesel fuel sitting in a tank that's not going to be used by any boats because the boats are gone, but we have access to it. Versus trying to go over on the mainland or across a bridge that's been damaged or a causeway that's been washed out. We still have the ability, but that takes the effort of, and it's not me, it's my folks who go, hey, Chief, well, what happens if this? I'm like, that's a damn good question. Let's figure this out. And we start looking and talking to people, say, hey, you go to this marina, I'll go to this. And we come up with a plan. So the wisdom is truly in the trenches, because guess what? At the end of the day, those poor bastards on that ambulance, on that fire engine, on that ladder truck, that heavy rescue, they're the ones who have to figure this shit out. It's not going to be because there's been some grand plan or we made everything great on our continuity of operations plan. I mean, those things help, but this is where the wisdom's in the trenches, where they're out on the street every day, and they're going to be the ones who figure out how to get shit done and get it done quickly and efficiently. So that's where I would really say that the administrative portion and the operational portion need to sit down and just have a brainstorming session. Take the glitter shit off the collar for 10 minutes, set it on the desk and say, all right, guys, let's talk about the what ifs. I mean, I'm not talking about if the asteroid hits the planet tomorrow, what are we going to do? That's going to suck for all of us. And we'll have to figure that one out. But what happens when we have the flooding, we have the storm, we have the natural disaster, we have the man-made disaster, we have the terrorist incident? These folks are going to be the ones. So, please, if I can implore, the officers to do anything, is look at some of the wisdom in the trenches and look at your resources, look at your personal or personnel resources. There's people on your shift that I guarantee have skill sets well outside the fire service. It could be administrative things like, they could be accountants, they could be carpenters, they could be plumbers, they could be welders, they could be engineers. You have no, I mean, look at Mike Wood. I mean, that's pretty, it's a pretty sharp dude. Bobby McGee's no dummy. I mean, he's not the most handsome guy in the world, but he's a smart son of a bitch as far as I'm concerned. But, but my point is there's so many people in our industry. My guy who was working overnight last night, he owns a heavy equipment company on the side. The guy knows a little bit about, operating heavy equipment. He was the best person I could have had on shift as my shift commander last night in case we had any, major debris issues that we had to have cleared. I didn't have to call outside resources. This guy could hop in a Public Works tractor or loader and do it himself. And while Public Works is home, or instead of waiting 45 minutes for him. So I would really, really, really encourage everybody to have that casual sit down conversation and look at the resources that you have available. And even outside of operations, I mean, look at people like, well, Ben, like yourself, or like a Gringo or Eric Olson. Some of these people can help you with some mental health needs on the shift, with physical conditioning, physical recovery needs. All these there's so many different things that we have in the skill sets in the fire service, and I think sometimes we get our blinders on and everything has to be about the EMS operations or fire operations or whatever the case is, that we squander some of those opportunities.
A couple more things I got tonight. I know you wanted to wrap up a little bit early, Ben. You got to hit the road, right? But anyways, just a couple of thoughts. First of all, my brother Lieutenant Steve Twilley in Ocean City is leaving next week. His dual role is he's an officer in the Air Force now and does medevacs on, I guess, airplanes. I don't know, maybe Ben knows more about it than I do. But anyways, he's got to go to 6 months of further training for that, and he's going to head out next week. And I wish him the best. And he really represents us well. Is a very, very solid guy. And the other thing I want to talk about is Trevor and I and Mike Wood from Baltimore City and Ray McCormick from FDNY are heading out to Wichita to do the Wichita Hot, and that's going to be a lot of fun. What I can tell you is it has to do with the first due engine and the first due truck and a mayday with a realistic response, we believe, that doesn't involve just evacuating the building or doing things like that. But we're really looking forward to that. We've been working hard getting ready for that. And Wichita is always a great place. There's a lot of great brothers and sisters out there. If you've never been to the Midwest and met the people out there, I can't really describe them, but they're a very solid and wonderful group of people out there. And I look forward to going out there and having some brotherhood and doing some training and having some good times and hell, maybe even a cold drink, you know what I mean? But we'll see how that goes. But that's kind of two things I had left, Ben. I think, Steve Twilley's a great asset to our fire department, and we'll miss him, but then he's also helping out with the Air Force and taking care of other things in our country. And, I salute him for doing that too. So that's what I got.
Yeah, the little bit I've talked to Steve about what he's doing when he gets, I guess, through all of his schools and that kind of stuff is he's eventually going to be teaching like the emergency care portion for those medevacs because of his experience as a paramedic, as a nurse in the ER. So I think he's actually going to be teaching a lot of the stuff that they're doing throughout this process. And then once he actually goes on deployments, it's doing the big medevacs on airplanes out of the I guess like the field hospitals to the larger hospitals. So I know he's really excited about it. They couldn't get a better person to fill that role. Steve is a phenomenal human being and an excellent provider. So I really wish him the best. Thanks for bringing. I didn't know he was leaving that soon.
Yes, yeah. You know what? I forgot something. Just so everyone knows, we had a horrific military plane crash up here in Ocean City not too long ago. It actually was right before Steve went to his officer candidate school, I believe. And Steve is also one of our divers in the fire department. We're going to kind of miss him, actually, but he's one of our divers in the fire department. And Steve got into the airplane, and sadly, they had a fatality in the airplane. And Steve would not leave him until he was out of the airplane to be taken care of. And I know the Air Force was just really appreciative of not leaving their guy below and bringing him up. And so, Steve's a really, really great guy. And, unfortunately, we've got to share him with other people because he's just that good.
Yeah, and I knew Steve was getting into that stuff, but I didn't know he'd gone that far into it. And Bobby and Ben, thank you for bringing me up to speed on that, because I've got a world of respect for Steve. Had the privilege of working with him for many years, had a lot of fun working with him, and I had heard that same story when that AWACS plane.
Yeah, a lot you're not allowed to talk about because of FCC rules, Trevor.
Well, the statute of limitations also. So we'll change names from that to guilty. But I mean, you just talk about it all around good guy. Not only a good brother to work with, but just the skill sets he has. And I'd heard the same thing when that AWACS plane went down off of Wallops Island at the Naval Air Station there, at the air station rather. And he, that's just kind of how he is. So I know he's going to serve exceptionally well. I wish him all the best of luck, and I know he's going to do phenomenal. And just want him to return home safely to us, like we do everybody. But old Steve Twilley, I'll say this real quick, just because I think it's hysterical. Steve never enjoyed talking on the radio. He was fine with it, but it's not something he always enjoyed. But he is that guy that you could really mess with, because he'd key the microphone, and if you started messing with him, he wouldn't unkey the microphone, and anything that he wanted to say to you went across the air. So that was always fun to be able to screw with him while he was working. But I mean, you talk about just a solid, well-versed, and diversified individual. So by all means, I think Ben, we ought to try to get him on the show when he gets done his next deployment. Maybe we'll bring Steve back on the show and talk to him a little bit.
Absolutely, it sounds great. I'll reach out to him tonight and see what his schedule's like. I know, I mean, the man is never home. It's a good thing, because it seems like whenever he is, there's another daughter that comes along.
Yeah, he's got the TK. He's got the TK syndrome, because he just keeps popping out daughters.
Yeah. So with that, we're gonna try and keep a little shorter. I know Bobby's gonna get back inside for music bingo. Trevor, I'm sure, has to get back to his crochet and cross point.
I just want to go to sleep. I'm tired.
Hey, so one more thing, Ben. I got one more thing, and I'm out. But so I really want to, my thoughts and prayers go out to Eric and Sherry Hoovenen. They've yet to return to Punta Gorda to see what's going on with their places. Evan Hoovenen is down there also, and little Eric Hoovenen is working down there. I say little Eric, he's a big Eric. He's probably bigger than I am now. But they're all down there in the middle of that storm, and I just want to, everyone say their thoughts and prayers that they have something to go back to, or some way to patch the stuff up they have going on down there. So for those guys, cheers, get back. I pray it's a short-lived misery, and then you can be back to normal again.
Thanks, Bobby. So with that, we're gonna wrap it up. Thanks for everybody tuning in. Again, kind of to continue with what Bobby was saying, thoughts and prayers to all the folks on the western side of Florida and anybody that was impacted by Hurricane Ian. From what we've seen so far, it's pretty horrific. So, keep all those folks in your thoughts and prayers, and help them get through that quickly. As far as the show goes, we're back in 2 weeks. I am super excited about it. We've got the Hazmat guys. They have a website. They have a podcast. They have a subscription service where you can go on and have conversations with other hazmat or other folks interested in hazmat. So we're going to be talking about just the general hazmat size up, like we did with Spec Ops and Technical Rescue a long time ago. Some general hazmat stuff, and then we're going to get into the lithium-ion battery debacle, and see where that takes us, and try and get the latest and greatest from those guys. So they are super cool. If you guys haven't heard of them or haven't seen them, thehazmatguys.com is their website. If you go on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, just about all the places where you can find our podcast, you can find theirs, and it's phenomenal. They're short, probably 35-minute shows, but it's great information and stuff about hazmat that will blow your mind from guys that are on a specialty hazmat unit in a large city and do this stuff every day. So be sure to put that on your calendars and come check us out because it's going to be a great show. They're also, if you miss our show, they're also going to re-show it for one of their shows one evening. So with that being said, gentlemen, it's always a pleasure. LT, I'm sure I'll probably see you tomorrow.
All right, love you guys. Be safe.
Yep, love you too. You guys have a good night. Stay safe, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.